hearing for Kevin Smith. I'd like to introduce my counselors first. Paul DiPaolo is here in the State House with me. And Counselor Juvenville.
Good morning,
Good
Council.
morning.
Good morning.
Anyone here?
Terry Kennedy is here.
Okay, and we have Counselor Kennedy
Eileen
here
Duff
in the
is here.
State House. Now, who do we have on Zoom? I
Eileen
don't
Duff.
see anybody.
Eileen is here.
Okay. Where are you? Okay,
Mira's here.
and Counselor Duff is somewhere out there on Zoom land.
Yep.
And I will
So is Counselor
begin the
Hurley.
hearing. Okay. First of all, I would like to welcome you, Attorney Smith. And now that I've introduced the council, why don't you introduce who you brought today?
Thank you very much, Councilor Devaney. I brought with me today my wife, Jennifer,
Welcome.
and my witnesses, Peter Flynn, Stephen Pascucci, and Peter Freeman, who's joining us.
Thank you for all your attendance. It's a difficult time, I know. So I'm going to read first the letter appointing you from the governor. Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate Kevin T. Smith to the position of Associate Justice of the Land Court. I submit this nomination, I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I am enclosing the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Charles D. Baker. So having said that, I say this all the time, but I get no respect. They don't do it. Please, in respect to the nominee, this is the most important day of his life, that we are respectful in all cell phones away, turned off, and not on the table. And about 10 years ago, we voted to swear people in, so I'm going to do that. And that will be you as the nominee and anyone who plans to speak today. So. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth. Thank you. Okay, I will begin by calling your list of witnesses in the order that you've given me. We first have Peter E. Flynn, Law Office of the Peter E. Flynn in Saugus. Welcome.
Permission of the council as I can remove my mask.
You please take off your, we're 6 feet apart, probably 20.
Okay. Take it off for 2 minutes. May I commence?
Yes, please. We're waiting.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Governor's Council, for having me here. It really is an honor and a privilege to be here on behalf of Kevin, and it's an honor to be here in front of the council. I read about you all the time. You're very famous, and you do great work. I've known Mr. Smith for over 30 years.
Tell more people that.
I'm sorry.
Would you tell more people that?
I will do so. No, it is a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
And in 5 minutes or less, I can report to you the old, the not so old, and the new concerning Mr. Smith as a practitioner of law.
Okay, as of 5 minutes, we don't have any rule here about how long it takes for a person to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
What I will do is I'll move it along, and if you, of course, if you have any questions.
No,
I'll-
take your time.
I'll stay right here. About the old, it goes back a number of years when I was a Special Assistant Attorney General. I was assigned to the Attorney General's office. I was in private practice, and I had an eminent domain case that I was defending against Mr. Smith. And it was an eminent domain case that involved a host of issues and land development, land use, zoning, what works on a property, what doesn't, the bundle of rights. It had just about everything you could ever imagine. Well, what I had was, because I was working for the Commonwealth, I had unlimited resources. And I had some of the best experts that you could have in the business in either defending or representing a plaintiff in an eminent domain case. And what happened in this case, as we went down, it was an 8-day jury trial in Plymouth Superior Court. And when I started the case, I was convinced that there was no way that this property owner, being represented by Attorney Smith, was ever going to get $1 million for this property in Rockland. The trial started, impaneled the jury, and we were off to the races. And our case went in. The plaintiff went first. Mr. Smith put on a very presentable case, good witnesses. It went fine for him, but we had all the answers. There was no way he was going to get $1 million for this property. And so we started our case, and I put a witness on who's a technical person, very good in the real estate and development, things like that. He presented himself very well, and I sat down. 10 minutes later, Mr. Smith is up still going with the witness, and I'm listening, and he was making some headway. And then 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes later, I start looking at the clock because I'm starting to run into trouble in this case. So about an hour into the case, of course, I'm cognizant of my jury. I don't show my nerves or my problem, but what happened was Kevin Smith basically tore this witness apart, and with another witness, basically the same thing. He did it very nice, gracefully, with good demeanor, totally prepared, and he knew his stuff. And when the case was over after 8 days, I was sitting there and I was very impressed. And I said, I'm going to be shocked. Jury went out. They deliberated for about 6 hours. They're not going to get $1 million. No way. They got $1,100,000. That's what he did. Now, go ahead 10 years, and I'll just jump ahead to a case. I used to have a condo in Martha's Vineyard, down the Vineyard. I had a condo there for 30 years, and as typically condo associations, they get themselves into trouble sometimes because not everybody understands how they're supposed to function. So we had a problem for about a year. And I said, you know what? We got property rights problems. We've got problems down here. Let's call Attorney Smith. We called Attorney Smith, got him involved in the case. And 2 weeks later, the whole problem was solved. And the board of directors, 42 units from all over the country, they were thrilled with Kevin's performance. I tried to take credit because I was the one that called him, but he did a great job. And now the present, just last year, the highest eminent domain settlement against the city of town in the history of the Commonwealth was a case against the city of Waltham, in which I represented the Stigmatine fathers. Behind the scenes, I wish you could have seen it, because behind the scenes, we had an excellent team, and we were looking for well over $25 million on the case. And behind the scenes, we had contacted Attorney Smith, and he stepped in and helped us with all the 40B, the regulatory issues and things like that. So as he's behind the scenes making us all look good, we were able to obtain a judgment of $30 million, which was featured in Lawyers Weekly over the last, it was in for 6 months as the highest settlement. So I will end with this, of course, unless you have questions. Kevin Smith practices law, and he does it with pizzazz. He does it nicely. He does it intelligently, and his demeanor is second to none. And if you're an attorney and you're appearing in his courtroom, he understands that you really do this and you practice law. And he will recognize that. And for the land court, I can't think of a better choice. And I sincerely hope that the Governor's Council consider him and nominate him for this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any councilors have any questions for Attorney Flynn?
Yes, sir.
Council Kennedy?
It's great to see you. I know you do a lot of this type of litigation that you described. And I assume that the reason he can afford to be a judge had something to do with that $30 million judgment. That's
He
a
was
joke.
actually, in fairness, not a participant in that component.
You didn't get that part?
No,
You didn't
he
cut him in?
No,
Bob, I don't know if I can vote for him.
no,
He did all the work, he said, right?
yeah. He did a substantial amount of it, yes.
Okay, great to see you.
Thank you.
Any other
Councilor.
counselors have any questions? Okay,
Question.
thank you.
I
I
think
have a
Bob was-
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Jubenville.
Well, thank you, Counselor Devaney. So how long were you in the Attorney General's office and who was the AG?
The AG was Frank Bellotti. I was there for 5 years and he made me a special, and Frank Bellotti gave me my first job in the business of law, and I owe Frank everything I've got.
You do?
I do.
Well, I'll be seeing him shortly. I'll make sure I get the list from him as to what he wants.
Okay, you can do that, but
Okay.
I can assure you he has significantly more resources than I do.
So you were there for 5 years
5 years in his trial division.
and that was for eminent domain cases?
Yes, it was primarily, yes. 95% of what I did there was eminent domain.
Are you a regular at the land court?
I am not a regular at the land court. I'm a regular in the Superior Court.
How come you don't go to the land court?
Why don't I go to land court? I will tell you, under Chapter 79, the law that drives eminent domain law, exclusive jurisdiction on all eminent domain cases is in the Superior Court. You can't take an eminent domain case to the land court.
You can't go to the land court with that?
Not with an eminent domain, not on the issue of damages. It could be a bifurcation of an issue that might result in the land court looking at the bundle of rights or something to do with the title of the property or something like that. That I have done, and I have actually done that recently.
So you've been to the land court?
I've been to the land court. I have been in the land court, yes.
Okay. And what that kind of legal issues does the land court resolve?
The land court has a broad spectrum of issues that they would typically handle. One of the things that I am so impressed by is that conveyancing, I'm convinced you're born a conveyancer. You can't be made one. And that's one of the strengths of Mr. Smith.
Why so? Why do you say that?
What's that?
Why do you say that?
That
You're born a conveyancer.
because I don't think it's something that can be taught readily to a lot of attorneys. A lot of attorneys that I work with, typically, Counselor, in an eminent domain case, if I run into a problem, I'm very good at what the damages and the trial and handling all the experts. I know enough about the title issues, but when they get dicey or tricky, we turn to people that are more familiar with those issues. And obviously, Mr. Smith would be one of them. And that's what we've done. So I don't know.
And have you seen the nominee in the land court practicing law?
I seen the nominee? Have I seen him in the land court nominee practicing law? I have not. I've not seen him in there.
The land court has jury trials, right?
They do in some cases, yes.
Okay. So after your 5 years with the AG's office, what happened?
I left the Attorney General's office and Frank Bellotti allowed me to be a Special Assistant Attorney General and assigned me to pretty much specifically only eminent domain cases. And then after Frank left office, I became a special under Shannon doing eminent domain cases. As a matter of fact, I was assigned as a Special Assistant Attorney General for eminent domain matters for every Attorney General up to and through Martha Coakley, and Maura Healy's the only one I haven't done special work for. I don't believe she has enough of that activity that would support the use of a special on a regular basis.
So that they don't do the eminent domain up there anymore?
They do, but they have full-time assistant attorney generals. It is vastly different, the practice of eminent domain law. There's less takings now than there have been in the past. When I was practicing it in there in the late 70s, we needed an entire division of trial attorneys to keep the pace with the takings. I was constantly going to jurisdiction after jurisdiction, trying cases.
And who was doing all this taking, like the MBTA and the Turnpike and stuff like that?
The largest taker of property in the Commonwealth is the Department of Transportation. And then that was usually followed by the MBTA and then the old MDC. Then your cities and towns would fall in behind that. But I would say the biggest taker historically, but it's not even close, is the Department of Transportation. DEM, DEP, other agencies do have limited taking authority, but you would see them occasionally. Spectacle Island being one of them, where I represented the Commonwealth in that particular case. But that was the Department of Environmental Management.
How long you been practicing?
42 years.
How long you gonna go?
I'm going to shop till I drop, I think. Everyone says that to me all the time. As long as my health holds out, I think I'm going to continue on. My office is small, Counselor. There's only three of us there, three lawyers.
And where's your office?
It's in Saugus on Essex Street.
Well, I admire that. Keep going till you go, till that's it.
My wife has things to say about that and others, but I tend to, when I go away, I want to come back after 5 or 6 days. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving tomorrow morning for 5 days.
Well, you did a great job for this
Thank you.
nominee, but I'm gonna have to ask you to please read that rule of brevity again the next time you come in.
I will do that.
I'm only kidding you.
And I understand that. Thank you, Councilor Jubinville, and thank you, all councilors.
Well, I just wanted to say that Council Ferrara just joined us. Do you have any questions for the nominee?
I don't have
I'm
questions,
sorry,
but
witness.
I am familiar with your office. I've been at Lynch and Lynch for 28 years. And you guys do a nice job. And I see some of you reported settlements and verdicts in Lawyers Weekly. So congratulations and thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Iannella, we've just concluded questions from you've just joined us. So do you have any questions for this witness for Peter Flynn?
No, I was out in the back there talking to a few constituents, but I do not have any questions. Good to see you, though.
Okay, thank you. You were great. I appreciate your testimony. I especially like to hear from opposing lawyers. I want to know what your impression is of this person that you went into court. What was your opinion of Attorney Smith when after you left in that really important case that you had in court with him?
That he did it with integrity. There was nothing, he didn't do anything that was off. He dealt with the facts of the case. And I was very impressed with that. Plus his knowledge of the real estate components in the case. But I mean, if someone said to me, when you try a case, to be blunt, when he walks in a courtroom, he's going to win 50% of the time because of his demeanor, comportment, and how he conducts himself. When it gets rough, he doesn't get personal with things, and he's practiced law and he knows how it works and how it should not work. So, when you throw that in where, when I'm watching him try a case, the jury's, is watching him very, very carefully. And I've been very impressed by that.
Well, your testimony means a lot to the councilors, believe me. And, in my tenure, we've had people sitting in your chair that really didn't know the nominee. They knew them in passing as attorneys. And your testimony is what I look for. And I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Councilor.
Our next witness is Stephen Pascucci. And Peter? And I know I pronounced your name right because my mother was a Danucci. And those two C's are Cha.
Thank you very much. Good morning to the Governor's Council. It's an honor to be before you this morning to talk about Kevin Smith. I'm not a lawyer, and I won't pretend to play one today. That's not my area of expertise. I've known Kevin since 2010, mainly through youth sports coaching. Kevin and I coached youth football in Concord and Carlisle for 6 years. We also coached basketball together for at least 2 years. And since our children have retired from playing youth sports and Kevin and I have retired from youth coaching, we've remained real good friends, and I'm just happy to say, and we're also neighbors. So I see Kevin a lot. This morning, I'd like to talk about Kevin's work ethic, Kevin's demeanor, and Kevin's character. On the work ethic end, Kevin, as you know his background, left a big job at a big law firm in Boston to start up his own law firm in Concord. So he was doing that, and he was also coaching youth sports literally every night for 2 to 3 hours. But I will tell you, from a practitioner, that job really never ends. It goes way beyond the practices and the games. It got to the point where I sat down with Kevin in his office one day. I wonder if he remembers this. And Kevin would coach football in the fall, basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring. And I said to him, Kevin, you got to stop it. You got to let somebody else do the coaching. And of course, that plea didn't work. Kevin's just one of the hardest workers that I've ever met. A typical day for him is an early morning run, regardless of the weather. The winter and the summer are the same. His law office, going right from his law office to a sports field, and then being with his family at night. And I really, really respect that work ethic. I think that work ethic translates very well to being a judge. The second thing is Kevin's temperament. I will tell you, from being involved in youth sports my whole life, both playing and coaching, it can get a little dicey on the sidelines. For the most part, it's the greatest thing for all of us involved, but there is a side of it that really isn't pretty at all. It's parents, it's sometimes the opposing coaches, it's sometimes the kids. Sometimes you'll occasionally have a referee that you don't agree with. I wish, standing next to Kevin for all those years, that I had his demeanor. I wish I had his temperament, where in a situation where things flared up, Kevin always stepped back, kept his calm, assessed the situation, and made really smart decisions. Decisions always based on the participants, which were kids. The last thing I'll talk about is Kevin's character, and mainly revolves around family. We kind of grew up in similar paths where family was everything. We both come from big families. I'm one of 5 from roots in East Boston, actually. And it's the most important thing for us. A lot of us get involved in coaching so we can be with our kids. It's really important to us to set an example the right way. And as much as I thought I did that, I would always look to Kevin, who would pull up to practice in his SUV, and the doors would open. His kids, multiple kids, would pop out of the SUV. Bags of balls and whatever would also pop out of the SUV. And it was just really impressive to witness that. I've coached his kids too, and I will tell you right now, I always observe young men and women, and Kevin's sons and daughter always walk right up to you without any hesitation. Hi, Mr. Pascucci, how are you? A lot of kids sometimes put their eyes down and avoid you, and that's not Kevin Smith's kids, and I respect that so much. And again, Kevin's the guy that gave up the big law practice in Boston to come back to Concord, do his own law firm, and I think a lot of the reason for that was to spend time with his family, and not a lot of people that I know would do that. So I'm really happy to be here and honored that Kevin asked me to talk about him. I think he'd be an outstanding judge. Just thank you very much. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you for your great testimony. Any councilors have questions for Mr. Pascucci?
Thank you.
I just want to say that your testimony means a lot because it's personal. You see him when he's under stress. when he has to listen to an umpire's decision that's not popular with him, and the kids, the parents, it's a lot. And I think the commitment that you said that he's had, I mean, it's year-round, all the sports, and to take time from his practice to do that, this says a lot about it. And if you hadn't come, we would not know about his, that activity that he has committed so much time for. So thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your testimony. Our next nominee is Francis Keneally. And Francis Keneally is on Zoom somewhere. We'll find you. Can you hear me, Mr. Keneally?
I can, Councilor Devaney. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you're on.
Thank you, Councilor Devaney. I would be remiss if at first I didn't thank the governor, lieutenant governor, the governor's legal counsel, the JNC, and the executive council. As you all know, last September, we at the SJC suffered a devastating loss with the sudden passing of Chief Justice Ralph Gantz, and your concerted collective efforts in bringing us back to full strength and putting us on a path to heal mean a great deal to us. So thank you to all. I've known the nominee, Kevin Smith, for over 30 years. We're not best friends. We've never shared a cup of coffee together. I don't have his cell phone number. I don't know the names of his children. But I have had the opportunity over 3 decades to assess his character, to speak with him many, many times, and to spend time with him both in personal and professional conversations. In 1988, Kevin and I appeared in the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. on opposite sides of a civil trial. We appeared there not as lawyers, but as classmates, law school classmates, vying for a spot on the national trial team. After graduation, of all places, by chance, of all the places we could have practiced, Kevin and I wound up in Baltimore, Maryland, practicing at similar law firms, practicing similar practice areas. And I would see Kevin from time to time in crowded courthouse corridors, running to pick a jury, or we would be going off to a settlement conference or talking about the latest deposition and trial prep, fully engaged in a busy practice of law. And as we all know, legal secretaries see lawyers at their best and their worst. And by chance, of all the places that my wife, Kathy, the legal secretary, could wind up working in Baltimore was at Kevin's firm. And the firm was known as a hard-charging litigation firm. But Kathy, my wife, would come home and remark that Kevin Smith was kind, respectful to all, the secretaries, the paralegals, the receptionists. And it meant a great deal to her because not everyone had that same demeanor. As you know, Kevin and I grew up, Kevin grew up in the Boston area. He went to DC. I grew up in Dorchester. And as much as we enjoyed Baltimore, Boston and the Commonwealth always beckoned us. So by chance, in 1997, we bumped into one another in Faneuil Hall. I had returned, he had returned, we just didn't know it. And since that time, we've kept in close touch as friends and commiserated over running a solo practice and all the challenges that come with that. The last time Kevin and I were in court together was in 2014, not as adversaries this time, but I had the privilege of watching Kevin argue before the SJC in a case called Brian Hickey versus Pathways Association, a case that involved well over 70 lot owners, highly complex. And I watched I watched with pride as my friend Kevin Smith had a mastery of the record, the facts, and the law. So as I look back at that trial in 1998 with Kevin, I don't recall who the better lawyer was that day, but I do know who the better lawyer is today, and it's Kevin Smith. And I'm confident that he will be an exceptional land court judge, that he will be treasured by his fellow judges on the land court for his diligence and for his selfless commitment to the work of the land court. He will be respected by the lawyers who appear before him for being supremely prepared every time he takes the bench. Self-represented litigants will appreciate him for his kindness and humility. And of course, people near and dear to me, courthouse staff, will appreciate the way in which he treats them, as he did with my wife back in 1995 and 1994. So I cannot commend enough the nominee, Kevin Smith, to you. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak before you this morning. Thank you.
No, thank you. Your testimony is very valuable. I'm going to call on my councilors to have any questions. First hand I see is Councilor Jubenville.
Got the name right.
I can't mispronounce that.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for giving that testimony. It means a lot to me. And I want to thank you for what you do up at the Supreme Court. You're probably one of the worst, hardest working state employees I've ever seen. And you do a wonderful job up there.
Thank you,
Keep it up.
Councilor.
We're proud of you. We're proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I saw Councilor
Oh,
Pereira. first.
Actually, Councilor Juvenville took the words out of my mouth. You're very humble. You didn't even start off by saying that you're the clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court. And I appreciate that. But I also appreciate the hard work you do every day. I often get emails from you on Sundays. I know you're in the office probably after church, sending out emails about the cases coming up. So I appreciate all your service to the Commonwealth. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilor Iannella.
Yeah, thank you. No question, just a comment. Fran, from people that I speak with about how the SJC works, you have been extremely helpful. As Councilor Ferreira says, you're humble, you're hardworking, you're so accommodating. And I can only say the best about you, and I just hope you can continue that excellent job that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Um,
Councilor.
I-
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you for pronouncing my name right. Maybe it's because you're Irish. It's Devaney. Thank you. I have heard so much about you, and I echo all the comments that the counselors have said here, and thank you for your work. And I want to thank you especially for mentioning Justice Gantz. And I have known him, I knew him for decades. I voted for him 3 times on his journey to the SJC, and he will always be missed. So thank you for that. Now,
Thank you. Thank you.
what would you say is the greatest attribute that this nominee will bring to the bench?
I think that if I can get away with giving you 2, it will be he will be supremely prepared. He will dig into every situation, every case, and know it better or as well as the litigants, but also it's his temperament. He's a very humble person, someone who will treat people with dignity and respect, no matter who they are. And that humility is something that's quite remarkable.
You know what impressed me that, I don't hear all the time, how he takes an interest and cares about the people that he works with, no matter what position they are. That's very important to me. So we all respect you and respect your testimony, and I thank you for taking the time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you.
Before I have you make your presentation, I think it's appropriate for me to read a couple of letters. And I have to say, I have a letter from someone, there's no words how much I respect this man and what a wonderful job he's doing as the chair of the land court. Gordon Piper, I voted for him 20 years ago. And I have to tell the counselors, because only Counselor Iannella had the honor with me to vote for Judge Piper. But I just want to tell the public that in my tenure, I never saw anyone more enthusiastic about getting an appointment to the land court. He was so animated, and I'll never forget it. He said, "This is all I've ever wanted in my life," just like this. And I thought, oh my God. I mean, we don't see that. And he was so sincere, and he proved what a wonderful judge he is, and to be the chair of the land court. And I just want to say that I can vote no when I know it's not, when it is appropriate. I have never voted no on any land court nominee. You know why? Because they're all so outstanding. So you'd be a great addition to these people, and what a mentor in Judge Piper. So I'll read his letter. Dear Counselor Devaney, I hope this finds you well. I write to you and through you to the rest of the council in advance of the council's interview with attorney Kevin Smith, who has been nominated to serve as an Associate Justice of the Land Court. I understand that you have had the opportunity to meet with Attorney Smith for over 4 hours to learn of his qualifications to fill this vacancy on our court, and that you will be presiding over tomorrow's hearing. The council should know that while I will not be in attendance tomorrow in person, this nomination to fill our vacancy is of the highest importance to the land court. As you can imagine, with only 7 statutory judicial positions, the absence of a single judge is felt acutely in the land court, even during usual times. In the midst of the pandemic, as the court has pivoted to handle a large and expanding docket virtually, and with limited access to our courthouse, the need for a full bench is even more pressing. As conditions improve and we emerge from these restrictions, we will need all possible help in making progress with our cases. I will be following the streaming video of the council's proceedings, and in that manner will keep myself fully informed about all that takes place. I have the highest regard for Kevin Smith and his skill and experience practicing in our court. He has appeared before me several times over the years in different cases and always has impressed me with his legal knowledge, his courtroom ease and demeanor, and his affable and pleasant way with all involved. I have seen him in a contentious case where one of his adversaries was a self-represented party, and he was patient and courteous in that matter, as at all of the times I have encountered him. Attorney Smith has had many years of experience in civil litigation. Importantly, much of his professional work has been in real estate-related cases, which affords him a particularly close fit to our work and will let him handle comfortably and the specialized nature of the land court's judicial business. He is highly regarded in the bar, as well as by the judges of our court, having appeared before several of them. If the council should provide its confirmation of its nomination, I am convinced Kevin Smith will be great and valuable addition to the land court's bench. I thank the governor and lieutenant governor for this excellent nomination and the council for its careful consideration. Please do not hesitate to contact me if I may offer anything further to assist you and the rest of the council. Please stay well. Very truly yours, Gordon H. Piper, Chief Justice. Is there any, I know that he was unable to come and he really wanted to, he's busy in court. Is there any way that we can see him, that he's watching, or is he in court right now?
My understanding is he's in court.
Yeah, he was very sorry that he couldn't make it. And I received a letter from Greg Peterson. And he reports, Dear Counselor, I write to support the confirmation of Kevin T. Smith as Associate Justice of the Massachusetts Land Court. I have known Attorney Smith for 15 years. He has never been anything but a highly competent attorney and a kind and honorable human being. We served together for 5 years on the board of the Carlisle Conservation Foundation, where he provided wise and moderate counsel to the organization during some of its busiest years of preserving land and enduring public access to our open space. And I just want to tell you that I was involved in some of these with constituents from Carlisle. And I want to thank you because it would have been devastating if the opponents had been successful in what they want to do, ruining that beautiful land. I won't get into that. I'll talk to you later. As a young attorney, he learned the law at large in well-respected firms in Boston. Since 2010, he has been a sole practitioner of law from his office in Concord. He is accustomed to having to do most of his research and writing, which in my view is excellent training for judicial work. He has deep experience in land litigation, which makes him a perfect candidate for the land court. In addition to his nonprofit work in private law practice, he has a serious track record of volunteer public service, including 5 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, 3 as chair, which is relevant to zoning and land use cases that come before the land court, and 6 years on the town's Recreation Commission, organizing youth sports. Attorney Smith has exactly the kind of work ethic and kind but firm temperament I believe we need in our judges. I have watched him chair ZBA hearings where the patience of board members was sorely tested. With humor, he reined in aggressive behavior by some making appearances before the board. With short, friendly, and to-the-point questions, he teased out the critical facts for the board to consider. He is a highly respected member of this community. I urge you and the Governor's Council as a whole to confirm Kevin T. Smith to be an Associate Justice of the Massachusetts Land Court when you take up his nomination on March 31, 2021. Sincerely, Greg D. Peterson. So, you know, I think that's well said, and obviously it was heartfelt, and I know the councils appreciate those letters, that this is all in public on our record in our council office. So having done that now,
Counselors,
let's hear from you for your
counselors,
presentation.
there's one additional witness on the screen.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. What is it?
Mr. Freeman, I think you may have skipped over him on the list.
Did we skip Mr. Freeman? Oh, my gosh. Oh, I apologize. I am so sorry. I had them in a different order from the people who were present, and you've been very patient waiting there, listening to me. I apologize. Okay, we do have a witness, and we welcome you, Peter L. Freeman from the Freeman Law Group in Yarmouthport, Massachusetts. Thank you so much for joining us on Zoom.
Thank you very much. I want to make sure you can hear me first, that I'm unmuted.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you very much. And I don't mind waiting patiently. In fact, all of the words I got to hear, including the letters, they're so true. You know, the word superlative is sometimes overused. And so I'll start with my conclusion. He really is a superlative lawyer. I know he will be a superlative judge. So I have actually known Kevin for a very long time. I've known him for about 18 years. In fact, when we worked on a land court case together. And he has been of counsel to my firm since about 2012, a little after he went out on his own. So we have tried many, many cases together, including one, by the way, that was the land court case that Clerk Keneally referred to when it was argued at the Supreme Judicial Court, a right-of-way case that started with me, but I was very fortunate to have Kevin to handle the litigation part of that case. And obviously he did a good job because we won at the SJC. So in any case, he's always been first seat at the trials, and I've worked with him on trial preparation. I've seen him work with clients and with witnesses, and I have seen him in the courtroom. As others have said, he is clearly an accomplished litigator and lawyer. He has both great knowledge and great skill. His demeanor in the courtroom is indeed always calm and professional. I'm not sure I would stand up if I was first seat. You know, that's why I let him be first seat, and he is the best, really just about the best trial lawyer I've ever seen. He treats witnesses and opposing counsel with respect, and of course, likewise with the court. And picking up on what someone else said about pro se litigants, we recently had a trial where the appellants were pro se, and he went out of his way, Kevin went out of his way to be courteous, to extend courtesies to them, and to help them make the conduct of the trial as smooth as possible, despite their lack of knowledge of evidentiary rules and the like. I have interacted and worked with Kevin practically every day for all of these many years. And in addition to being a superb litigator, he also possesses other characteristics, they've been mentioned by others, other characteristics that make a great lawyer, and I believe will also make a great judge. These characteristics are an ability to listen, an ability to dissect complex issues, a strong work ethic, I've seen that for sure with all the work we've done together, and integrity of the highest order. Although I'm older than Kevin, which you might be able to tell, he has in fact been my mentor when it comes to litigation. We've worked on many types of cases, including contract matters, title matters, land use matters, a lot of permitting cases, many of which have been Chapter 40B affordable housing cases, which is my specialty, where he represented the developers. There is no doubt about Kevin's top-level technical skills and intellectual ability. In addition, I believe that Kevin's interpersonal skills that I have seen so frequently when I work with him and when he's worked with our clients and with other attorneys are also attributes that will serve him very well as a judge. I know that Kevin possesses not only great knowledge of the law, but also great respect for the law and for the rule of law. And I know that this is what motivates him to want to be a judge. In closing, I can honestly tell you that Kevin is one of the finest lawyers and people that I've ever met, and I'm very privileged to have worked with him. I will miss him, as you might gather, but I am very happy for him and so proud to have known him. And in my opinion, he is so extremely qualified to become a judge. I will miss working with him as a colleague, but I know that he will be a fair, honest, and hardworking judge. And as I said at the beginning, a super and superlative judge. So I thank you for this privilege and opportunity, and I certainly help you confirm him. And just one other thing, which is simply that as an avid sports fan, the commentary previously about Kevin's demeanor on the sideline, I know what that's like. And I don't know which is hotter as a sports fan, sometimes abiding by an umpire's ruling or sometimes a judge's ruling. But Kevin will handle it well. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I certainly urge you to confirm him. Thanks.
That was a great analogy. Thank you so much for your sincere testimony, and it means a lot that he was your mentor as well. Any councils have any questions? Well, I just want to tell you the wait was worth it to hear your testimony. So I thank you very much for attending. Now that we've completed the list of witnesses, now it's your turn to, you know what, I should say, Councilor Duff is the only one on Zoom, and I hope that you hear me to be able to question.
On Zoom too. She's
I know Counselor Hurley is also remote.
Okay.
And we can.
Oh, I
hear you.
didn't know.
We
Okay,
can
if you
both
have
hear
any questions.
No, we will,
No.
we'll speak up if we do, but thank you for asking,
Okay.
Council. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
because I don't see you, so that's
No, I
why. All right,
don't- I
thank you
don't
very
have
much.
my
Okay,
face
so
on.
now it's your turn for your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Devaney. Thank you, Council, for considering my nomination to be the next Associate Justice of the Land Court. Of course, I'd like to thank Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito for nominating me. I'd like to thank Bob Ross and Lauren Green Petrino for the work that they've done through the nominating process. And so I just want to make sure I mentioned their names. And I'd obviously like to thank the witnesses who came today and have spoken here on my behalf. And also I'd like to thank, there's many other lawyers and non-lawyers who've tried to support me through this process. And I've thanked them personally, but I'm not going to identify them now. But there's a lot of people who have been helpful to me throughout this process. And finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Jen, who's sitting here today, and my kids, Liam, Declan, Maggie, and Griffin, for their support throughout this process. I lean on them a lot, and they're always there for me. You have my application. It's filled with descriptions of my experience and my cases I've handled. So rather than rehash that, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and how I got here. I'm the oldest of 6 kids that were born in 7 years, 3 boys and 3 girls. My parents came from working class families in East Bridgewater. They met in first grade and became friends and were married 20 years later. My dad was a self-made guy. He was the first in his family to go to college, and he went all the way. He wanted to be an engineer, and he got his PhD. I remember when he got it because I was 4 years old, and I actually remember the graduation party. So we were young. My parents were young, and we were young, but I remember those days. My mother was also the first person from her family to graduate from college, and she became a nurse. I lost my dad 9 years ago. My mother hopefully is able to see this. So briefly about my family, we grew up in Acton for the most part. I actually lived in Watertown for the first few years of my life until my dad went to get his PhD. We moved back, and I grew up in Acton. Typical family, dinner together every night, mass on Sundays. My parents encouraged us to get involved with sports and music and church. And all of us, to some extent, got involved in those things. But our parents taught us about being respectful of people, always have an open mind, and work hard. And those are really the driving principles that our parents tried to teach us. I was the first and only person in my family to go to law school. I don't have any people that I can point to say I emulated them. I was trying to emulate them when I went to law school. I think I was drawn to the adversarial process of helping people reach resolution to their disagreements. I think that's why I initially went to law school. And from there, I just tried to take what my parents taught me and tried to use those to make myself as good a lawyer as I could be. And that was work hard, be fair, and be honest. And I believe those principles have served me well, and those are the kind of principles I try to bring with me to the bench. Just one, it's been mentioned by the witnesses, but I just wanted to speak to it directly. I did leave the city of Boston 11 years ago to open my own practice. My kids were young, and they needed me around to help them with things like homework and reading and sports. We've heard about my involvement in sports, but it just wasn't around enough working in the city. I needed to be more present, so I made the decision to leave. It was a big decision, but it was the right decision. I didn't make as much money on my own as I would in the city, but I had enough work to pay the bills. I had decent cases I could try. I had a lot of lawyers in the city that referred cases to me that kept me involved in interesting types of work. And I still was able to spend as much time as I wanted or needed with my kids. So now I'm here. I've been practicing for 32 years. I've tried cases in the land court, superior court, the district court, federal court. I've argued at the appeals court, the SJC, in the First Circuit. Some jury trials, some bench trials. My experiences in the courtroom, I think, and in my personal life have prepared me to come before you and ask for your confirmation of this nomination. So as I sit before the council, humbled as I am with this nomination, I will pledge to the council that if I'm confirmed, I will bring to the bench the hard work that I believe is important in everything, honesty with myself and with others, and I will pledge to be fair to everybody, my fellow judges, the staff, and most importantly, as a judge, the litigants, the witnesses, and the lawyers. So I thank you for listening to my opening comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone on the council has.
Thank you very much. I'll start with, let me go to one, District 1.
Thank you,
Councilor
Madam
Ferrara.
Chairwoman. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I actually don't have any questions. Let me tell you why. I had a very lengthy conversation with Jennifer Roberts, Judge Jennifer Roberts. And when she came before us first time, I asked the chief of the land court whether or not she was qualified. And she said she's one of the top 5 people in the Commonwealth that was qualified. And Jennifer finally got through this council, and she's a great judge from all accounts. And I've never been to the land court, but I solely rely on what Jennifer Roberts tells me. And she tells me you're top shelf. You're an awesome person and a terrific lawyer. I've looked through your credentials, your resume. I think you're going to do a terrific job on the land court, and you certainly have my vote next week, sir.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Jubenville.
Thank you. I likewise don't have any questions. Reiterate what Councilor Ferrara said. Fran Keneally and I spent a lot of time talking, and I value his judgment a great deal. I don't have any questions. I think you're going to make a good judge in the land court.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
Thank you very much, Counselor. I also don't have any questions. You're such a outstanding nominee. I was very impressed with your presentation, as well as the folks who spoke on your behalf. You're clearly a person of compassion. I obviously have the experience. You're a family guy. I think you're going to be great. Now, I just maybe one question. How long have you lived in Concord, or did you live in Concord?
Well, I actually live in Carlisle,
Okay.
but Concord is right next door and it's part of the same community.
Okay. The only reason I
Been
said
there for 20 years.
my sister has lived in Concord for like 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay. But best of luck. I'll be more than happy to support you next week.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Counselor.
Counselor. Counselor Kennedy.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you a lot of questions, but I'll be honest. Like most lawyers, we don't know a lot about the land court. You know, I spent a lot of time doing criminal work, a lot of time doing civil work. I've only done one land court case in 37 years that I alluded to earlier. So when we're in a situation like that, we have to rely on other people. And in terms of their opinion about your abilities, and your witnesses were great. I am particularly fond of and rely upon Peter Flynn, your witness, who goes back with my family 70 years at least. I value his judgment very much, and he called me right away when you were nominated and talked to me about it. And when I have a land court case, or I have an adverse possession case, or an eminent domain case, I send them right to him because he's probably the best around at it, as everybody knows. So relying on him, I'll be voting for you next week, and some of your other witnesses. And I thank you for putting your name in. I think you're going to be a great judge.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Counselor.
Counselor. Counselor DePaula.
Thank you, Counselor. I suppose I'll keep the trend because my experience and the issues I'm passionate about don't necessarily intersect with land court. So I look to experience and temperament and what I see from the testimony today alone, let alone the folks I've spoken to leading into here, speaks tremendously to your character. Like you, I was at a 21-hour billing firm, and I left when my first daughter was on the way because I knew that was going to be the most important way to spend those years of my life. And I think it speaks to your character and your motivations. And also, hearing today that you were known to be treating the staff in your first large law firm with respect. And again, having been in a firm like that, while I worked with many great lawyers, there were definitely folks who were not kind to the staff and were demeaning and condescending. So I really appreciate that as well. And then finally, your service to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I sit on the planning board in Worcester, and I know how folks can come into hearings with a lot of passion. It's impacting their home. It's impacting their vision of their neighborhood. And so hearing that you were able to handle those hearings and be respectful of the folks giving public testimony spoke a lot to me as well. So I look forward to supporting your nomination next week.
Great.
Thank you, Counselor. Now I'm going to our Zoom counselors. Counselor Duff,
Thank
wherever
you.
you are.
Thank you, Council Devaney.
I wish we could see you.
Yeah. So Attorney Smith, I guess what you're hearing is exactly some of the stuff we talked about. Is land court is so very specialized that not a lot of people know about it. Sometimes they confuse it with housing, and they're two completely different issues. But I guess my first question I want to ask you, and pardon me if it's just glaringly obvious, but why on earth do you want this job? Because it's very difficult, convoluted law.
That's a good question.
It's not a trick question, but it's sincerely, I'm curious.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that 20 years ago, I set out to create a practice that would allow me to go to the land court, but my practice took me to the land court a few times. I had some success there. I liked the way the cases were handled there in terms of being assigned to judges and being carried through the end of the case. You got to know the judge a little bit more that way as compared to the Superior Court. And I began to do more and more work that centered around real estate issues, involving ownership issues, involving development issues. And I just developed a knowledge of the land use issues that are often tried in the land court. And so I've always wanted to be a judge. And as I did more of this land use work, being a judge in the land court seemed like a good fit for me. So that's really the reason why I put my name in.
Good for you. Good for you. We need people like you, frankly, that will step up to it. And as I told you, I'm very familiar with Catholic University Law School. It's a fine law school. Most of the lawyers I know that went there actually do telecom stuff. So, but in any event, just being there, I'm sure was a fabulous experience. What is there, I guess, a more or less typical case that comes to land court, do you expect, or are they just all so very different?
I think they're all very different. I think you'll see a lot of adverse possession cases. You'll have cases involving real estate development approval issues. Those are zoning type appeals. You have disputes over property rights, boundaries, easements. It covers quite a number of different areas, breach of contracts. So I can't say in my experience that there's a typical case. I think it covers the spectrum, all of course related to people's ownership interest in real estate, but it covers every possible disagreement that might arise with real property.
What have been some of the more interesting cases that you've been on either side of in land court?
Well, I had an interesting case involving a dispute over the sale of a commercial building where two different buyers wanted to run a medical marijuana business out of this building. I represented the seller. The reason it was interesting was, number one, the two buyers, each of whom claimed they had a right to buy the property, were very aggressive because this was a perfect situation for medical marijuana. And this was in the early days of the approvals of medical marijuana businesses. The case was handled by Judge Foster in the land court. And because time was critical, he agreed to a very shortened discovery period and a quick trial so that my client, the seller, who just wanted to sell his property, he didn't necessarily care to whom, could hopefully end up making the sale. And it was a good lawyer on the other side. And I think it was breach of contract issues. It was credibility of witnesses issues. And it was interesting from that standpoint.
Okay. I see on your resume you've done some 40B work. Do you want to share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. As Mr. Freeman testified just before I began, he is a specialist in 40B permitting. A lot of people, neighbors, abutters to projects object to the approval of affordable housing projects. The bulk of my work has been supporting the developer to prove to a court, land court or superior court, that the project should be approved as an affordable housing project. Those are heavy expert laden cases, less fact cases. I've also tried those cases in the Housing Appeals Committee. There are different procedural reasons why you'd be in different courts, but it's most often supporting the developer and proving that the approvals are appropriate given the project that's been proposed.
Yeah, that you're right. That's one of those cases that could really go into some different places. Let me ask you this. Do you think that developers for their 40B requirements should be allowed to not actually do the building and instead just, throw money in the pot to the city? Or do you think they should be actually required to do the work that that the community is frankly expecting them to do?
I haven't actually run across that situation, Counselor. My experience has been that if the developer is able to finance the project, that the developer builds the project. I haven't run into the situation with my clients that you described, so I'm not sure I could answer that.
Well, often they do build the project, but what they do is in lieu of building the units, they give the city money. And that money then goes into a general fund to be used however the city wants, and does not necessarily go towards housing. And it's a very common practice. It happens every single day. And it is one of the reasons that this is a continuing issue, is because it never gets resolved because there is a loophole, which of course it benefits the cities. It's an ongoing sort of gerbil wheel. And I don't know that you would have experienced it, but I would expect you to be familiar with it. All right, I'm all set. Thank you. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Hurley,
Yes,
can you
thank
hear
you.
me?
I
Okay,
can hear you. Can you hear me?
okay, you're on.
All right. Why did you name all your children Irish names?
Most of my relatives are of Irish descent.
It's interesting because I've only known one person with the name Declan. But I think that's cool. I really do. We talked at some length. I think Councilor Duff has ably covered the questions and areas that I would have had. And in talking to you, I get the sense that you are the real deal, and that you're going to make a great judge. So you have my support for next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor Hurley. Again, I want to thank you for all your time. I think we beat the record. I think it was 4.5 hours, but it was wonderful to meet with you. And as I've always said, I meet with everyone because I'm just not voting for the person on the paper. I want to know the real person, and I like your experience that you're bringing. You have worked in every court, SJC, Supreme District, all of it. You're bringing that experience to the land court. As I always do, I like to go through your journey getting here. Now, I always like to allow the people who don't know what the procedure is, and it is the Judicial Nominating Commission, which are 21 lawyers who have the real authority of who is going to be presented, because they have the ability to choose who they're going to interview, who they're going to recommend to the governor. And the Governor's Council has no part of that procedure. We don't know how many people are being applied, how many rejected, how many interviewed. We only have one person to vote on us. on the nominee. I want people to know that because they assume that the council has so much authority. It isn't. It's the JNC that does. So I want to go back. You did apply 2017, 2018. So let's start there and tell me about, the Superior Court. And as I note and look at all of your resume, you have appeared before SJC, Superior Court, all of them. So you were well qualified to apply to those courts. So tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I initially applied at the Superior Court level. I spent a lot of time in the Superior Court, and I thought it'd be interesting to be a judge there. I think what I realized once I get into the process, my lack of criminal experience was a real attraction from my candidacy. So, and frankly, had a number of people who read my application said, "Why aren't you applying for the land court? You're in the land court all the time." And when I thought about it, I
But
said,
you did get through 2018 to get an interview, right?
yes,
And that was to the
that was land court.
the
That was land
the
court.
court.
Right.
And you got rejected.
Well, no, I didn't get an. I guess you got an interview with Lon Povich, and there was gonna be 3 openings that year, was my understanding. Jennifer Roberts and Diane Rubin were nominated. The 3rd opening, which I understood was going to be Judge Long, who's the position I'm
But
was nominated.
but Jennifer Roberts, that's another story. Yeah.
Yeah, but she was confirmed that year, as was Diane Rubin.
So tell me, you applied this time for the land court,
Right.
and tell me about your experience before the Judicial Nominating Commission.
Well, I had an interview with a number of people. The number I don't recall. It was a lot of people. Having gone through it,
You don't remember how many people it are? There's 21 that have have the awesome responsibility to investigate the nominee, to look at their application, to call people, to choose who they're going to interview and who they're going to, who they're going to recommend to the governor. So you don't recall how many were there? Are there
I don't.
21?
There were a lot. I mean, there was
Yeah.
over 12, maybe over
Well, if you
15.
you hit the jackpot, because we usually hear 8, 10. Well, anyway, now this is through the pandemic.
No, this was before.
Okay, because, so you did get to the lieutenant governor to be interviewed.
Yes.
Okay. So, having said that, I do want to make a disclosure, which has no bearing on my opinion. You graduated from Boston College. 2 of my 4 children graduated from Boston College, my son-in-law and 2 grandchildren. But it has no bearing at all, but great school. I am impressed that you've had 32 years. I think that's what the council is impressed with too, because you bring life experience. A lot of times a 40-year-old doesn't bring life experience. So maybe, let me ask you, okay, have you since 2018, which is only 3 years, has there been anything significant in that time that has made you more qualified to be on the land court?
I would just say more experience.
Yeah.
I've been before the Housing Appeals Committee now 2 more times, and so it's a different forum, different issues, and so it's just more experience.
Right. Well, I know 40Bs have been a big issue in a lot of the communities across the state. And were you involved in the Stigmatine Fathers?
As Mr. Flynn testified, I assisted him behind the scenes in talking about some of the regulatory issues that were relevant.
Yeah, that's the first time I heard it today, and that's in Waltham, and quite controversial to take that land, if people aren't aware, by eminent domain to build, to change the location of the high school, really, and they were going to build a new Waltham High School. So tell me, how did you feel, was that one of your most rewarding results?
Well, to be fair, the result was really Mr. Flynn's result. But I think, it was rewarding for me to be of assistance to Mr. Flynn. And I think what Mr. Flynn ended up achieving was a very fair recovery for the Stigmatine brothers. So,
Well, it was a very controversial situation in Waltham, I know very well. In fact, there were a couple of city councilors that were defeated in that election. So people had strong feelings,
right.
whether, they should take the land or they shouldn't. And it's interesting, the two that were opposed to taking the Stigmatine fathers' land in the building were the ones that were defeated. So, you don't have a crystal ball. You never know how that's going to go. So what was the most rewarding out of the 40B that was so difficult and you felt that it was the right thing and you were successful?
The most rewarding thing was actually not a typical 40B. A number of years ago, municipalities started suing developers after their projects are completed because they're limited in what kind of revenue or profits they can earn from a project. And municipalities started to sue developers alleging that they were skimming profits and unfairly lining their pockets with money that they weren't entitled to recover. And there were a lot of municipalities that were doing that. I had a client who had done things by the book, and the municipality went after him, and it was a very contentious piece of litigation. Went on for a long time. He did not skim profits, and we were able to establish to a jury's satisfaction that he did not, and we won the case. That was an important case for developers in the 40B world.
I like your writing. Do you want to tell us about that case that let me say what you said.
Which case?
Yeah, I'm trying to think the one, well, the Carlisle, when you're in the Carlisle Zoning Board of Appeals, I know some of the things that came up before you. What was the most controversial on the zoning board there?
There was a number of
There were a
controversial.
lot, I know.
I think Carlisle was a dry town up until about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And when the only store in town wanted to get a liquor license, a lot of people objected to it in town. And of course, once he had jumped through all the hoops and was allowed to apply for and get a liquor license, there were zoning issues. And so when he came before the zoning board, there was a lot of people that were against him. And so those were raucous hearings, packed conference rooms. They went on for hours and days. And so that was, and ultimately he was entitled to do what he wanted to do with his building, but it was a raucous hearing that
Well,
allowed
I have
people
to
to release.
have to say, that's great training being on the zoning board.
Yep.
You're really a target. Everyone has, your witnesses were excellent. And they brought up all of the things that you do, that they have seen you do and so well. And you have such a resume. And there really isn't anything that I could add to ask because, we talked for all that time, but what has been presented here says it all, what your witnesses said about you. And I know that Councilor Ainella brought up compassion, and I have said it many times. I won't vote for anyone if they don't have compassion and empathy, and you really have it. I mean, your personal life, all the activities to care about your community, to take all that time, and for the youth that you've worked year-round in addition to your law practice, that is remarkable. And you're going to be such a great addition on the land court. And I am very pleased that you continued to apply, because I want to tell people, doesn't always happen the first time.
Right.
There's probably someone political that jumped the line, whatever, but don't give up. We would have lost you if you did that.
Right.
So thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And I am going to adjourn this hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilors, we are currently waiting for the Lieutenant Governor. She should be on shortly.
Am I excused?
No, you can leave.
The hearing's done.
You can sit here.
Councilors, Lieutenant Governor is going to join you soon. So just burn a holding pattern for right now.
Hi, everyone. I'm here whenever you are.
Here we go. Okay, guys, the meeting's on. Guys.
Hello.
Lieutenant Governor's here. Lieutenant Governor.
I'm here.
Marilyn, we gotta go. We're in session now.
Terry, you're doing a hell of a job today. Paul, you're doing a hell of a job today. Marilyn, you did a hell of a job with that hearing. Excellent.
Nice. Nice to have friends.
Unbelievable.
Quiet over there, quiet.
I was kidding you. I was kidding you.
No sense of humor.
Lieutenant Governor, we're live when you're ready to start.
Okay, everybody's ready?
Yes.
All right, we are calling our assembly to order, and I recognize Councilor Ianella for prayer and pledge today.
Thank you very much. We come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered together. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work. Help us to work together and encourage each other to excellence. We ask that we would challenge each other to reach higher and farther, to be the best we can be. Amen.
Outstanding.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you, Councilor Ianella, for leading us in our prayer and pledge today. I recognize Councilor Hurley for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 I recognize Councilor Duff for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace.
So moved, Governor.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I recognize Councilor DiPaolo for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Whitney J. Brown to the position of Associate Justice of the Westborough District Court.
So moved, Governor.
Discussion?
There's a motion, there's a second.
Second in
call-
discussion.
Councilor Devaney.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, I want to say that I voted for Whitney 16 years ago for a clerk magistrate position. I knew then that she was outstanding and that she would make a wonderful judge. And when I met with her recently, I asked her, what took you so long? And I am so pleased that she applied and that she has been approved, and I'm going to be very proud to vote. And you know what? Her twins were 4 years old. She has and the other daughter was 11. And I just couldn't believe it. And I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, we may begin the roll call.
Counselor Hurley,
Yes.
Counselor Ferreira,
Yes.
Counselor Jubinville,
Yay.
Counselor Devaney,
Yes.
Counselor Ianella,
Yes.
Counselor Duff. Counselor Duff,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor DiPaolo,
Yes.
Thank you. We have two nominations today. Carol Vittorioso has been nominated to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Fitchburg District Court, and that's within your district. Councilor DiPaolo, do you have a date for this hearing?
Yes, the hearing for Carol Vittorioso will be April 14th at 9:30 a.m.
Okay, April 14th at 9:30. We also have the nomination of Brendan Moran to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Worcester Juvenile Court. That's also within your district, Councilor DiPaolo.
Yes, thank you. And I'll schedule that for also April 14th at 11:30.
Point of information, we're going to have one at 9:30 and one at 11, you're saying?
No, it's 11:30.
That's an impossibility. I mean, you can't even ask questions of a person. That's not, we don't just ring them in and ring them out. This is wrong. Can I ask, in due respect to you, Lieutenant Governor, if the council will consider the 21st to have the
No.
second?
We just
No.
did today's hearing in an hour and a half.
I'm sorry.
We just did today's hearing in an hour and a half.
Lieutenant Governor, what is it?
Yeah, I think we can have, I think the will of the counselor within whose district both of these nominations are in has proposed the date of April 14th. So the proposals to begin at 9:30 and
9:30 and
11:30.
11:30.
I have said so often that we only should have one on that day. This is the most important day of the nominee's life outside of getting married, having children. And to give that person ample time for the counselors to vet this person, they should have one day. And I don't, and you know, it never was like this through the years. And I really, in all due respect, I wish it would be reconsidered.
Okay.
Lieutenant Governor, just for the record.
Yes, Councilor Hurley.
We have held more than one hearing for all the time that I have been on the council. This is my third year. And if the hearing at 9:30 goes over past 11:30, then the other hearing is just delayed until that hearing is finished. And there was one occasion where I had to actually continue a hearing to the next Wednesday. So it's been done all along.
Okay, I will leave it to the members of the council to make sure that you have plenty of time to vet the nominations. According to Councilor DiPaolo, Carol Vittorioso is scheduled for 9:30 on the 14th, and Brendan Moran is scheduled for 11:30 on the 14th. I believe you have a hearing underway. Thank you for your.
It's over.
Okay, thank you for your efficiency and your hard work today. I know we are in the midst of holidays. I wish you some peace and comfort. I know with the Christian holiday of Easter, it's a new beginning. And I wish a new beginning for all of us as we battle through this stage of COVID and more people are receiving the vaccines in the Commonwealth. So I wish you all peace, health, and safety. Thank you all very much for your time today. That concludes our
Happy
business.
Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter, everybody.
Thank you.